my own name had to be changed 7 times to be exact. Government at the time decided they are going to carry out an ethnic assimilation process. And it was there at the border that I remember very clearly making a decision. I have to get a good education. The only way out of this will be if I get a good education. I never thought of it that way. There is a disassociation for sure, because I see it as a brand. I never see it as my name. But it does create, you become much more responsible for what you do because it's your name. It's an incredible responsibility. Fashion is the second most polluting industry. For an industry that prides itself in freedom, in expression of freedom of thought, there is a huge and very problematic modern slavery practices in the industry. All these fashion brands, there's all the controversy, but also facts.
In this episode of our Strategy Unscripted series, I had the real pleasure and privilege to sit down with Neri Karra. Neri Karra's story is one of grit, determination, and the overcoming of huge obstacles that were put before her. She is an entrepreneur, she is an academic, and she's a business leader that has grown and led organizations at the very, very sharp end of business excellence. During our conversation, we discussed her learnings, her thoughts, and her insights, as well as what she sees to be coming down the line with regards to the future of her industry and others. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Very much looking forward to hear your thoughts, and also to seeing you next time on our Strategy Unscripted series. Neri, really appreciate you joining me and really appreciate you joining us on the Strategy Unscripted video podcast series. As we were just discussing before we came online here, we were meant to be together in person, but unfortunately with extenuating circumstances, it's not always possible. But I think everyone's very used to having these type of calls online as well. So really appreciate you still taking the time and making the effort. Really excited about what we're going to discuss today and the topics we're going to get into. But your story is a fantastic one. So maybe just to start with, if you could give a little bit of introduction on yourself and your background, it would be much appreciated.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here. And like you said, I wish I was there in London in person, but here we are. My story, it's a little complex, long, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. My story starts in Bulgaria. I was born in Bulgaria to a family of Turkish ethnic minority. And unfortunately, during communism, and yes, I lived during communism in Bulgaria, the communist government at the time decided they are going to carry out an ethnic assimilation process against people of Turkish ethnic minority. And they had a plan which they called it, "There are no Turks in Bulgaria." What that meant is that they would come and forcefully change our names to Bulgarian names. And the irony was you had to choose your own name, but if it wasn't in the list, a few months down the line, actually, the government decided, oh, hold on a second, they are choosing names that are a little too similar to Turkish names. So now we have to create a list of Bulgarian names that are pre-approved they can choose from. So my own name had to be changed 7 times to be exact. Wow. When I was growing up and I went to elementary school, and it was actually our schools that were converted to these name-changing stations. It was something you would see in the movies. Unfortunately, history keeps repeating. And it doesn't matter about which religion background you are, as long as there is discrimination, it just keeps going on, unfortunately. So towards 1989, again, the communist government said, anyone who is Turk or feels Turk needs to leave Bulgaria. So they basically kicked us out. And together with the 360,000 Bulgarians of Turkish ethnicity, we had to leave the country. We packed whatever we had, and you can't take much with you. We had 2 suitcases with my family when we made our way first, with car, and then on foot. We crossed the border. And it was there at the border that I remember very clearly making a decision. I have to get a good education. The only way out of this will be if I get a good education. And the rest is history. Even though I didn't speak Turkish language at the time, I had to learn it actually when we immigrated. I graduated at the top of my high school. I had very good grades. I was very determined, and I eventually got financial aid, which brought me to University of Miami. And from the age of 16, I was also working as a translator, taking Turkish leather companies to Italy, where they will get leather products, leather skin. So this is the foundation of how my business idea started to form. Because when I got to University of Miami, I was an honors student, and in one of my classes, which was business idea generation, business models, I started to think of a business idea. It was part of my, you choose what you want to do. You can write a thesis, you can come up with this business idea, and it's where the idea was born, really. I thought, what if we went to the Italian suppliers, asked them for the leather skins that they are already throwing, which I was aware of already, and create them into a collection and sell them to people who are in Russia, former Soviet republics, because my parents, since they were immigrants, they were selling T-shirts and different textiles, some leather products to Russia, Ukraine, former Soviet republics, and so on. Why? Because we were much closer to that culture than the Turkish culture. We spoke Bulgarian, and we already had. They had already started to get to know the distributors. So that's how the business was created. And eventually, I also went to University of Cambridge, where I started my PhD. And my thesis focused on ethnic entrepreneurship and international entrepreneurship. So this is, in a nutshell, my career.
Oh, fantastic. And thank you for giving us a little bit of insight into a very challenging and very difficult story and upbringing. But I think for me anyway, the biggest takeaway is obviously the resolve and the determination you had, which is absolutely abundant, absolutely clear, but also the significantly impressive clarity that you were able to have even in such challenging moments, as you said, of being on foot and having to flee the country where you were previously situated. Even in those moments, to have the clarity of, this is how I'm going to get myself out of this situation, or this is how I'm going to progress, and this is how I'm going to really push myself forward from here. I think that's what's so impressive. There are a number of different ways that we could take this conversation, and obviously you're an academic, which we'll discuss. You are an entrepreneur and a business leader. Initially, what I would like to focus on is the organization that you've built that shares your name. And if you can maybe just tell us a little bit more about that, about what you do today, and a little bit about what that journey has been like to create that organization into what it is now.
Absolutely. So the name is Neri Karra. It was named after me. It wasn't my idea. I didn't set out to create.
That's what they always say. No, I'm joking.
No, really. It was actually my cousin, because as I said, we are all immigrants. My family at the time, my mom, when we immigrated, she worked as a cleaner in a factory. My father did many different jobs, from being a construction worker to driving taxis, converting, being an illegal cab driver, to be more specific, and eventually selling import extra t-shirts to neighboring countries where we could speak the language and we knew the culture, which was Eastern Europe, Russia, former Soviet republics, and so on. So when the idea was born, because I thought, what if we start something that is ours? Instead of my parents selling someone else's products, what if we sold our own products? This was the foundation of it. What can we do that will make the life of my family better, as well as my own life? And this is very much a family business. I never ever said this is my business or I created it, because every single person in my family has been involved in it. My parents, very much, they are still very much in the business. My brother, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, and it's in 2 different countries. We have a factory in Bulgaria and in Istanbul. The factory in Istanbul, today we employ 175 craftsmen. And we also produce for Prada and Miu Miu. We are their official manufacturer today, in addition to producing our own brand. What sets us apart from the very beginning has been the quality and the attention that we pay to craftsmanship. It's exceptionally high. And as I mentioned, we produce for some of the leading Italian brands. And even every 2 weeks, their inspectors come to our factory. And they are each time amazed and still want to know what is the secret to this craftsmanship. Because this is, in strategy, this is our unique competitive advantage.
It's your secret sauce as an organization, as we say.
Absolutely. It is our secret sauce. And it took years to create, and it took exceptional amount of learning, relearning, failures, mistakes, but it is our secret sauce, and which is why even through recessions, even through challenging times, the company, knock on wood, keeps on going, because it's our exceptional craftsmanship and quality. And as I mentioned, like when Italian inspectors come, they look at the very same bags that are produced also in Italy, and the quality is exceptional. So that's why they keep coming back to us, and that's why the company keeps on going. And it is a family business. In Bulgaria, we have the metal accessories. We also produce our own metal accessories. The very final finishing is made in Bulgaria, as well as our online operations.
And by the metal accessories, you mean the buckles, and you mean these
Yes.
type of elements as well?
Yes. And this is a funny one when I say our quality, because we were originally buying those from Italy, but because we were not satisfied with the quality of the metal accessory producers, and we are talking the very, very, very top manufacturers, top suppliers, the finishing would still not be good enough for us. So we do everything in Bulgaria. It's palladium coated, which is more expensive than gold. And we employ 90% of our employees in Bulgaria are women, and who from disadvantaged backgrounds. So this was also when we were being B Corp certified. The company is also B Corp certified. And I went through positive luxury certification as well. Both independent sustainability certifications called us to be social innovators. The social aspect of our company, the importance that we put on our employees is exceptionally high. From making sure to give back to our community, again, as I said, employing women from disadvantaged backgrounds, we had to work with the European Union and the Bulgarian government in order to ensure that was done correctly. So this is in a nutshell. And again, it wasn't my idea to call it Neri Karra, as it was my cousin, because we sat around the kitchen table in her home in Bulgaria. And when I was laying out my idea for the very first time, she said, why don't you call it your name? Because you are the one with the idea. And that was, in some ways, my friends will ask me, how does it feel? At the time, they will ask me, how does it feel to see your name on a handbag or on a product? I never thought of it that way. There is a disassociation for sure, because I see it as a brand. I never see it as my name. But it does create, you become much more responsible for what you do, because it's your name. It's an incredible responsibility. At the same time, eventually it started to feel like, as I was talking to you, Ben, earlier, I did this with my family in mind. I wasn't thinking, about myself necessarily. And as I started to grow up and get into my late 30s, I also started to ask myself the question, what is it that I want for my life? And that's when I decided to also take a step back from the business. And today it's very much run by my family. I started my consultancy, as you know, started to focus much more about my thought leadership, doing talks, giving talks, writing books, publishing articles. And I still teach, as you know. I'll be starting my course at ÖSEP'e in the fall. So this is how it has evolved.
No, fantastic, and it's such an interesting journey that the organization has gone through, and to me at least, it sounds like there's two key elements, two key components that come out of what you just described. One is it's a significantly purpose-led organization and purpose-driven organization from the very, very outset. Even the purpose of to build something with and for your family, but really with, and to grow it with your family. But also the secondary component for me is what strikes me as the absolute focus and almost obsession with quality.
Yes.
And the quality is the element which runs through everything else. Would you say it's a fair assessment from my side?
100%. Very good assessment. And, quality is almost a reflection. The final product is a reflection of many, many, many tiny different steps and decisions that we have made along the way. When you come to our factory, it doesn't feel like a factory. It's like a laboratory. And as I said, every 2 weeks, we have the inspectors from Prada visiting us. And they themselves are very impressed with the quality, with the cleanliness. We have zero waste policy. Even the tiniest shred of leather, tiniest, is collected at the end of the day. And we bring it in Turkey. There's a leather manufacturing facilities where they make the leather skin. We bring it to them, which they make into leather skins. Every single Neri Karra product is recycled back into leather skins as well. That's another important part. It's a circular business model, we have zero waste policy. We use no plastics at all in the making of our leather products. This is also very important. So from paying our employees very good salaries, social security, so the employees arrive, the craftsmen arrive to our factory, they are picked up from their home with company transportation. There is breakfast, lunch, and tea snacks that they take tea breaks. Lunch is provided in our own factory. It's catered by one of the top caterers in Istanbul. This type of attention, this type of respect that you show to your craftsmen and the love they put in to making that product really shows. And that's why I say it's a series of choices. And in the end, I know we will talk about strategy, but to me, that's part of strategy as well. the choices that you make as a business owner at every step of the way in your company.
No, definitely so. And it's interesting because for us as an organization, as Strategy in Action, I think as we discussed previously, we work with partners. And one of the things that's really emerged for me through work with partners is the concept of being reciprocal in terms of what you can provide and also what you ask for. And that's, for me, is the key part of the partnership, is that there is a reciprocal nature to what you ask of your partners, but also what you're able to provide them in return. And for you, I think it sounds very similar with your team and your employees, because you ask a lot of them, they're talented people, they're experts in their craft, but in return, you provide an environment in which they can grow, an environment in which they can thrive, an environment in which they can really be fulfilled and achieve their ambition, achieve their goals as well.
But also training, that's another important part, because every single one of our craftsmen have been trained by Italian craftsmen. I forgot to mention that we partnered with Paolo Dendi, who actually was how do I say this? He would make the collection for top brands, Ferragamo, Tom Ford, Gucci. He will make the pieces that are sent out down the runway.
Yes.
He was the one creating them. And we became friends years ago. Today he's in his 80s. He visited our factory every 3 months. Initially, it was every month in the very beginning, giving training to all of our craftsmen. So yes, they have this exceptional talent and skills, but it was honed and developed over many years. And I don't know another manufacturer who will put in this much. It's very costly. It's an expense, time, effort, finding these maestros, bringing them to Turkey, flying them in, having them stay for 1 week. And this went on for years. And all of our initial collections, from idea to collections, were developed with Paolo Dendi. So these are the things that, when you see a product, there is a lot that goes into it. It's not so simple. And when I talk about this, sometimes a student challenged me, and he said, I remember a few years ago, he said, well, I can just go to, any other manufacturer. I don't have to manufacture it myself. See, that's the issue, because yes, of course, you can go to anyone and have it manufactured. Anything like that is possible, but it's not going to have longevity. And I think these days, this is where the problem and the challenge happens with companies and with, startups who, maybe it's social media, where we think everything can come so easily. You can just find a manufacturer, you can just create a brand, and it looks easy. But in order to make it successful, in order to have something of longevity, you need to put in a lot of effort, a lot of work. And as I said, every step matters, every choice matters.
And this is a very interesting element of the fashion industry and the retail industry now. Is if you look at and it's interesting, you brought up social media and you brought up the concept of things, people wanting to attain things very quickly. Because on social media, we consume content like that. I mean, sometimes in even under a second. But also now with the rise of fast fashion, which may have some challenges with US legislation, which is being talked about as well, especially with some of the fast fashion companies coming out of China, we see people who are engaging with brands, buying like this, buying items at a very low price, wearing them once. Maybe they don't last particularly long. Maybe they never wear them again. And also, even to the extreme, you have now influencers, fashion influencers coming out of China and other places who are making huge sums of money and making huge names for themselves, reviewing products in 10 seconds and then reviewing the next and reviewing the next. I'm not sure if you've seen some of those videos. So for me, it seems that across social media, across how we engage with fashion, and across how people purchase clothing items, for example, or bags or anything else, everything is quicker and everything is shorter term. So for you as an organization and for what you stand for, which is quality and longevity, how have you found the evolving shift of the industry?
I am very much against overproduction and overconsumption, very much against it. And in fact, I did 2 TEDx talks on this topic. One of my talks is about my grandfather's philosophy, frying in your own oil, being self-sufficient with your own resources, not looking outside of yourself to get to growth and so on. I think it's a significant problem for the industry. I mean, fashion is the second most polluting industry for the environment. For an industry that prides itself in freedom, in expression of freedom of thought, there is a huge and very problematic modern slavery practices in the industry. All these fashion brands, there's all the controversy, but also facts. Prisoners are used in order to make those clothes, or the Uyghur Muslims in China. There are all these with Nike. I think they got into trouble for that. Even Zara. I think a lot more legislation is coming, and we are going to see more and more of that. Personally, I believe that, but also I'm quite optimistic, and my optimism comes from the younger generation. I do believe, even though majority of users of social media are younger generation, there is also an opportunity to use that social media, to use those marketing tactics, to say sustainability is desirable, to say overconsumption, this is not okay. Here is the problem with Shein and Temu, all the brands that are highly problematic. And I think there are going to be changes. I think in the future, for me, I never believe a company that doesn't do the right thing can be successful long term. You can certainly be successful for 5 to 7 years, let's say, which I think is a shorter term. But I don't believe Shein or Temu are going to stand the test of time. They simply cannot.
Yeah, and I think it's a very poignant comment, because we've seen this in other industries. We've seen this with other organizations before. We've seen it even in the challenges for an organization like WeWork. I know that it's difficult to do too much of a comparison, but with WeWork, you see this incredible growth, you see this incredible momentum that they built behind it, but the short-termism of let's rent out this building, let's rent out this office, let's get people in, but not actually looking at the longer term of, is this sustainable? Are we actually able to manage and build a business for the long term like this? And we've seen the challenges that they've had as well as many other businesses as well. What I'm keen to talk about was this, everything we're just describing, everything we just spoke about, was this partly your motivation to write your book that I have in front of me here on fashion entrepreneurship? So the creation of the global fashion business, was this part of the motivation, was to communicate these type of insights?
Actually, the motivation for my second book, which I just signed a book deal now with Wiley, I'm working on a book. It's connected to business longevity. That's the motivation, is that for my first book, Fashion Entrepreneurship, that's an academic book. And I wrote it because at the time I was very much an academic, and I never found a book that was encapsulating everything I want to teach my students. Second, I have always been curious, what are the resources and capabilities? What are the secrets of fashion entrepreneurs, fashion designers like Chanel, Dior, Valentino, that stood the test of time and were able to create these iconic brands? So my book is the first one to analyze the fashion history and look at fashion from that perspective. What are the characteristics of these iconic fashion designers that allowed them to create these successful businesses that became iconic and stood the test of time? So this was my motivation.
And what's your hypothesis?
There is several. Well, they are not afraid to show their point of view. And this is again about their competitive advantage, the secret sauce that we talked about. Each of these designers have a very unique style, each of them, looking at history, and they were not afraid to show it. But something very interesting happens. Each of the designers that stand the test of time at the time and are able to create the industry, the fashion industry today, they are all reflecting the cultural changes that take place at the time. Chanel, let's take Chanel, for example. It's the First World War when she comes into the scene. Up until her, fashion is Paul Poiret, which is highly extravagant. Charles Worth is very impressive fashion designer. He's the first fashion designer who puts a label on a dress, who stages a fashion show, who goes after the influencers of the industry at the time. He creates haute couture industry. He's the one who created fashion business as we know today. But so think clothing is highly extravagant. Chanel comes into the picture, and she's not the one to get rid of the corset, but she creates these very simple dresses. Imagine everything is extravagant and suddenly extremely simple, and the color black is used in fashion, which is not until that time. And the designers of the time, the ones that don't stand the test of time for that time, are the ones who ignore the changes taking place.
Definitely.
It's war happening, and the women don't want to dress in these extravagant outfits. It's the First World War, and the marketing at the time says, dress for your husband and cheer them up when they come from war, when they come home from war. But as the war progresses, the morale gets down, the morale is lowered. No one wants to celebrate and, dress in these corsety, extravagant dresses. They don't want to do parties anymore. Chanel, similarly, when the Second World War happens, responds to it in a very similar way. In fact, she has a quote that says, "The first war made me," because she responded to the cultural change taking place at the time. Christian Dior arises on the scene during the Second World War with the new look. Yves Saint Laurent, similarly, during the youth protests in the 1960s, they reflect and adapt to the cultural change that takes place. And this is a very significant thing I saw in all the designers. It's the common thread.
And it's very, very interesting because we talk about the VUCA world, and we talk about how volatile the world is in which we live, and we talk about the fact that the world is becoming continuously more volatile and continuously more ambiguous and continuously more challenging. And within that, organizations need to respond. And we, for example, talk about leveraging an approach where you need to look at what are the priorities that are related to my core business, what are the priorities related to scaling up my business, but also how am I thinking ahead? What are the priorities that I have which are enabling me to start to be adaptable, start to think about the new markets I may need to move into, start to think how I may need to adapt products and adapt the services. And clearly that is what these organizations have done over the years, and how they've been able to be so successful and able to build the brands they have today. What I'm really interested to have your take on is, just as some of the names you've mentioned were as well, you're clearly a leader by nature, or you've developed the skill set, you developed the capabilities to be a fantastic leader. But often the challenges for a business are that it sits with the leader, or it sits just with the management team. And there's a real struggle to cascade a strategic plan, cascade a vision, cascade a purpose down through an organization, right to the very lowest levels, right to the front line. how have you found that challenge, and maybe how have you overcome that challenge of communicating and connecting and cascading the strategy down through the Neri Karra business from the very, very top, all the way to the designers, all the way to the creative, all the way to the very front lines?
I think getting people to believe in your vision, that's number one. But I really hear you, because this is a significant challenge. For example, I was able to take a step back from the business because my parents and my brother runs the Bulgaria operations. My parents are responsible for the Istanbul operations, and I've taken a step back. Of course, I'm there to support the business, and it does carry my name. But I think your question, the way I'm hearing it, is also about succession. Like, what happens if the leader is not there anymore? How can the business continue? And that's a very important point. And I think if I look back to the companies I studied, the ones who were able to leave a legacy, what you stand for. And it's in the strategy class, when I stand in front of the students and I talk to them about vision and mission, maybe it sounds so trivial. Maybe it's like, oh, it's boring even, or so unimportant. But the companies that I have seen that were able to carry through, and for this leadership to be passed on, if you are able to have a very clear mission and vision in place, and that you were able to convince everyone to join this vision that you have,
The journey, essentially, the journey of where you're trying to go to,
then you have a chance. Then you have some chance. And bringing everyone on board, not telling them, hey, I'm the leader, I know the next steps, this is how we are going to, bringing everyone on board, asking for their input. I think if I'm to talk about our own company, everyone is involved. Every single person is involved. They have a stake in what is being put out. They are responsible for what they do, but also they believe the company, they believe the brand, and they believe the vision. And that's why they continue to be there, and they continue to put out work that they can be proud of. I think this is an overlooked but important aspect. And in my classes as well, when I'm in front of students, I want to make sure, like, there are two things. One is the mission and vision statements that I think even maybe some leaders don't think it's that important. I mean, Simon Sinek became famous because he said, you need to know your why. This is where it's coming from.
Absolutely.
And the external environment. I think these two things are, for me, very, very, very important. To be aware of the external environment, as you mentioned, the changes that are taking place, and the changes that will be taking place, and how you can adapt to them.
And I think the two words that came to mind for me as you were just talking then were pride for those in the organization of what they're doing and what they represent, but also what it sounds like to me is ownership. And I think what I've seen in my fledgling career, compared to you especially, but even with my background previously in tennis, what I saw being involved in various teams, ownership is critically important. And within an organization, in order to go and execute the strategy, if people feel like they own it, they've been part of creating it, and they are a critical part of implementing and executing it, that builds extreme ownership. And extreme ownership provides a significantly better opportunity for success than people who feel disconnected from the organization and feel disconnected from what that organization is trying to achieve.
Very true.
So I'm interested just to know, and before we move on to the academia side, I'm just interested to know with Neri Karra, how do you support or how have you in the past or now supported the execution side of the strategy? Because we've spoken about the importance of vision and mission. We've spoken about the importance of understanding external analysis, the importance of understanding the external environments in which you exist. But then ultimately, you need to go from talking the talk to
Yes.
walking the walk. So how have you found the secret, or maybe not the secret, but how have you found to effectively be able to get those in the organization to walk the walk?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think, again, the relationships. I wrote a research paper on this. It's called Homophilic Ties, where, it translates into what is that saying? The birds of a feather flock to this.
Yeah. Flock together.
English is not my first language. So
no, but it's
yes,
absolutely correct. It's absolutely
that
correct.
saying where you have to find a common thread with people you do work with, your distributors, your suppliers, your employees. And you don't have to all be immigrants. You don't all have to come from London. You don't all have to have graduated from the same school, but you have to find that common thread with people, what makes them click. And ultimately, what is strategy? It's about providing value for your suppliers, value for your customers, value for your employees. And for me, it's that, what is the value that I can provide for them? That's the question I always ask for my distributors, for the people, for my customers. What is it that they find valuable? What is it that they are looking for that I can provide? And I think having these two things work together, where you are all on the same boat, and we all are here because we want to make business. My supplier wants me to buy from him and wants to provide me the best quality leather so that we can have a long-lasting relationship. We have worked with the same suppliers for the last 25 years. They are all Italian suppliers. One of them is owned by LVMH. The other one is owned by Chanel Group, Samantha, the leather factory. So we all are doing business, but even from early days, we all had to have this common thread. We want to sell, we want to make money, we want to do business long term. And how is it that I can do that? So asking these type of questions, and I think that will be my answer with my suppliers, with my distributors in Russia, in Ukraine, in former Soviet republics. What is it that they want to get from me? How can I become the best partner possible? That's how you drive the ship.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Is understanding either how do we solve someone else's pain, or how do we contribute? How do we provide more gain to them? How do we help them to achieve what they want to achieve at the same time? And it sounds like what you've built, and clearly what you've built, is you've built that for yourself and your family, together with your family. Together with your family, you've built it for the team that sit around the organization, within the organization. But also, and I would put forward that maybe this is part of your secret sauce as well, is you've been able to build that with suppliers and with partners too. Yes. Because they're also a critical part of the ecosystem. Even though you're paying them in some cases, they're a critical part of the ecosystem, and they're a critical part of the final product that sits on someone's table when they're having lunch in London or Paris or wherever it may be.
Very true. Very true. I think it's, in everything. Like, I'm writing a book today. This book, okay, I'm writing it for me, but at the end of the day, it's for someone. It's, what does the reader want from me? What does the publisher want from me? I think taking ourselves, and I try to do that, taking myself out of the equation. Of course, I'll be the one writing the book, but it's not about me. It's about the publisher. It's about the reader. It has nothing to do with me. And I think in business is the same way. What is it that I can give to you? What is it that I can give to the reader? What is it that I can give to the publisher? And in the business, what is it that I can give to the customer, supplier, and employees, and so on?
And speaking about delivering value, and speaking about what can we give to others and what can we provide, you're now working more and more in academia, as you said.
Yeah.
How has that shift into academia and maintaining that and managing that alongside all of your other responsibilities? How have you found that journey?
So I have been teaching. When I graduated from Cambridge, I was teaching at LSE, at Imperial, London College of Fashion, and Regent's University. And then I took a break for about 5 years or so, and went back to Istanbul to run the business and be much more hands-on. And eventually I got a job offer to be an associate professor here at a university in Paris. And I became a mother. I worked at ESEC for 5 years. I became a mother, and it was the way I looked at things. It's when it all changed for me. I started asking myself the question, what do I really want? And I have been a little bit critical of academia, of traditional academia. I'm respectful of academia, but the challenge I have is I want to, like, it takes a very long time to publish something, first of all. And the audience is not always the practitioners. The audience is not always the startup founder, the entrepreneur, executives. And I wanted to publish the way I thought was right, which is publishing at HBR, Fast Company, maybe writing blog articles, reaching people in a different way. So I actually am now still in academia. I'm going to teach a class at ÖSEP, but it's a lot more, it's not full time as it was before. So I started my consultancy company where I get to do what I want to do the way I want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part of anyone's journey is when they can reach the stage where they really can commit the majority of the time to what they want to do and what they want to focus on, and where they believe they can deliver the most value as well.
Yes.
So with that in mind, what's next for you? What's next for Neri Karra? What's next on the consultancy side as well?
So what's next for Neri Karra, as I said, the company is very much managed by my family. The idea is to keep going, to keep going, to keep doing what we have been doing. For me personally, I'm in terms of my personal career, as I mentioned, I'm now focused on writing my book, my next book, which is talking about immigrant entrepreneurship and business longevity. It's at the intersection of that. And keep teaching, keep doing my public speaking, and be able to, I feel very privileged actually and incredibly grateful to be able to write, to speak, and teach. It's an incredible, exceptional blessing because, like you said, I get to do what I want to do the way I think it's right.
Yeah, and I think there's a saying I quite like, which is the attitude of gratitude. And
Yes.
the attitude of gratitude, I think, and I'm sure that you would have had that gratitude at the stage when Neri Karra was being developed and being scaled, was the gratitude that you're part of building something, and then the gratitude that you have it at a point where it's really accelerating, and the gratitude to have the opportunity to teach. And I think that's just a very important attitude and approach to have, and I'm sure that's a big part of the reason for the success that the organization and yourself have had in many different areas. So look, Neri, I don't want to take too much of your time. I've already taken quite a lot of your time. So really appreciate the opportunity to speak, really appreciate the opportunity to dig in a few topics. To be honest, there's many more topics we could dig into in more detail. So I hope we get the opportunity to do maybe in person next time as well. And in the meantime, yeah, I just want to say thank you very much. It was fantastic to have the opportunity to speak to you today.
Likewise.
And yeah, look forward to the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neri. Thank you.
Thank you.